Hello, and welcome back to part 8 of my Unreal Engine crash course. Unlike many of the episodes, this one doesn't start out in the unrealest of engines, but instead on this website. You can see here devassets.com/assets/desert environment. So, the reason we're starting out here is because this asset pack is the one we're going to be using in this episode to make our game look a little nicer. I've decided on it because I like the aesthetic and because the assets are well made and they work well within the Unreal Engine. So, go on this website and down here you can select what you want to pay. If you don't want to pay anything, select 0 and grab it for free. It's very nice that they allow us to do that, so yeah. And before you download this, I want to direct you to the usage guidelines of the site. So, whenever you download assets or buy them, always make sure to check the guidelines. So, what you're allowed to do with them, and even more importantly, what you're not allowed to do with them. So, in this case, they say the usage guidelines are extremely permissive, and I think so too, because you're free to use them. In any of your projects, and you can use them in both commercial and non-commercial projects. So if you use them in a game and you want to sell that game, you can do so with these assets, but you might not be able to for other assets, so that's why it's critical to check. And here they say you do not need to credit this website. Something that other websites might require you to do is give attribution or credits. So even if you do not need to credit them, I think it's something you should still do because, it doesn't take that much time. And it helps spread the word when your game inevitably becomes the next big thing. So, yeah, make sure to do that. And the only thing we're not allowed to do with these assets is to distribute them as is, just copy them, paste them somewhere else, basically. That's why I'm asking you to go to this website and download them. And once they're downloaded, unpause the video and we'll continue inside of the engine. Alright, so, once in the engine, we want to start by importing some of the assets we just downloaded to make our game look a bit prettier. So let me bring up the folder here, Desert Environment, that's the one you'll be downloading. Make sure you extract the zip. And inside of here you will find a README with, once again, link to the guidelines and some credits and stuff like that. Give it a little read if you wanna. Here's a Unity package, which is for the Unity game engine. In case you noticed, we're not using Unity, so this isn't useful for us. So instead, head inside of Models, and then Environment, and Ground, and Textures, and you will see some textures for the desert floor, and we're gonna import these first so we can, make a cool looking desert floor. Alright. Inside of here, in Platformer, I'd create a new folder called Desert, and in there we're going to put all of the assets from the pack. This is useful because if you later decide on I'm going to make a city theme, then you can make a new folder called City in this folder, and the assets are separate, and you know where to look for, each theme. Very useful for organization. So, inside of Desert, we're going Alright, so inside of Desert, we're going to create another folder, Ground, because we're going to be adding more stuff here later. So, once again, to keep things separate. Inside of Ground, we're going to import these assets into. So, click, hold Control, and select these three textures. We're not going to use this one, we're just going to use these three for now. And click and drag them in here, and Unreal will automatically import them. You will see some messages. Click OK on this for now, and here they are. So I'm just going to rename them with T underscore in the front, but that's optional. Okay, so we have 3 different textures, and what we're going to do is we're going to combine those 3 to make a cool looking sandy floor. For instance, you can double click and open this up, and you will see that this looks rather bland and boring. This is just like a black texture, so there's nothing really going on here, and this is some weird color texture, and I'm going to explain what those are in a second. But for now, let's focus on creating a material. So click on this first. We're gonna name this m_ground, M for material. Okay, So, what is a material? Basically, the best description for materials, one that has really stuck with me, that I've ever heard is, you know, it's like magic paint for your surfaces. So it cannot only define the color or texture of the surface, but also whether or not it's metallic, how reflective is the surface. These are some basic attributes you can define, but it's also much more, like, for instance, is the surface bumpy? That's what the weird bluish texture is for. More on that in a bit. You can also say, okay, maybe I want my texture to glow, for instance, for a light bulb texture. You can do that. Or maybe my texture isn't fully opaque for like a window. Or, you know, maybe the 3D object that I'm applying this material to should be moving a bit, like a curtain swaying in the wind. Or maybe if we're creating a water material, then this material should refract stuff. Like if you ever held a stick into water, you've seen it bend, and that's what refraction is. This and many more examples are ways you can use materials to basically create the look you desire. So a material is much more than a texture. It can be a single texture, but it usually consists of multiple textures and some more, math stuff to basically make the material look like you want to. Okay, back in here, we're gonna open up this material editor, and you can see that we have something here that kind of resembles the blueprint editor. And that's by design, because, you know, if you know one editor, then you can find your way around the other more easily. So right now we only have one node here, which is the result node. This is where everything else goes. You can once again right-click and you will see you can create nodes here. These are totally different from Blueprint, however. Some minor overlaps, but most of them are unique to materials. In the left here you can see a preview. Down here there are some properties that you can change, and there's some more stuff that we don't need to worry about for now. And to get some textures in here, the easiest way, I think, is to just select those and just drag them in here. Then maximize the tab again, and you can see we have created 3 of those so-called texture samples. So make sure they don't overlap each other, stack them below each other, and you will see a bunch of outputs. So you can say, I only want, you know, the red parts of this texture, because, you know, images consist of red, green, blue, and maybe alpha for transparency. We're just going to use red, green, and blue without any alpha, and we're going to plug this one into base color. And notice on the left, the sphere now changes, and if we zoom in, you can see maybe some of the spots. I don't know if video compression ruins it, but you should see it on your end. Basically, that have been added. You know, if we go back and open the texture, you can see those same spots here, and they have now been applied to the material. And if we now go ahead and go back to the viewport here, and apply this ground material to the floor, you will see this texture. Okay, it hasn't applied it yet. What you actually need to do is click Apply, then Save. And now it does some shader compilation, and you will see, oh, okay, our floor has now transformed into something that looks a bit like a desert. So, we're not done yet. We're going to add some more things. So, plug this into metallic for now on. This basically describes, is our texture metallic, is our material metallic or not? In this case, I don't think sand is metallic from what I know. So, yeah, this basically just says, the black just says it's not metallic. We're gonna look at this in more detail in a bit. And we have this strange texture, and this is gonna go into the normal. And now if you zoom in, you might see, especially where the parts where, you know, the light hits the sphere, you might see some little bumps, and this is exactly what normal maps do. Basically, they fake depth. So this material sphere doesn't actually have any of the bumps in its model, but the normal map makes it appear like there are some bumps. And okay, you can't really see it that well in here, but you can see it in here. And yeah, basically normal maps add some bumpiness. What you can also do is hold 1 and left click to create a single value and plug this into Roughness. And what this basically does is it allows us to change how shiny our material is. So if you want really shiny sand, you can just set the roughness to 0. And if you want something that is really diffuse, you can set it to 1. By default, it's 0.5, right in the middle. And you can play around with this value and basically decide on, you know, what kind of look you want for the sand. I think I'm gonna go with a bit of a shinier sand, but not very shiny, because I like the look. But you're free to choose it. And you can see that it has, you know, become a bit shinier in here, if you angle it correctly, so you know, there's a lot of light. Okay, one more thing. As you can see in here, the texture scaling is relatively appropriate, but if you look in here, you can see that it's rather, yeah, it's rather pixelated or blurry. And we kind of want to change the scale of the texture so it fits this floor better. And that's one way we can do this. You can right click and create and type in texture coordinate. Expand that. And the results, you can plug these into the UVs of all three. And now this what this allows us to do. So textures only have, you know, 2 dimensions, so width and height, the U and the V, and we can change that. So if we, for instance, change it to 20 and 20, or maybe 10 by 10, and save it, which also applies the material, then we can see in here that it's now, you know, the texture is now repeating more often, meaning it is it has overall shrunken down, and now it looks better. And if we play, you can see, yeah, we got a nice floor. You might be able to mix out some of the bumps on there now. And yeah, that is a nice little desert floor. So, these are the basics of materials. Next up, we want to actually add some 3D models so we can properly decorate our levels. Alright. So in here, go back to props, so back to models and props, and we're gonna add a container. So here you can see we have once again a few textures, and we have this FBX file, which is a 3D object. This is what we're gonna import along with a few textures. So we're gonna create a new folder here, container, for the container, and we're gonna import this 3D model first. You will see, unlike with the textures, you get this, you get these import options. For now, all of these are okay. You don't really have to worry what most of these mean. The only thing we're gonna uncheck is do not create materials. So this will not create a new material for the asset, which is what we want, because we want to do it manually to see how it works. But you can do this in the future if you know how that works, because it saves you a few clicks. Okay, import all, and we get this container. So once again, I'm going to follow the naming convention and name this SM_container for static mesh. A double click, you can open it up, and you can see yet another editor. Same as in the viewport, you can fly around with the controls you're familiar with, and you will see, you know, we have this nice container here. It's just untextured at the moment, so it's got this standard texture. So next up, let's create a material and add some textures. So we're gonna name this material M_container. Alright. And to apply it, go in here in the static mesh viewport, and on the right hand side you will see material slots, and we only have one. So select the material we've just created. Nothing has really changed for it because we haven't added anything to it, but we'll do this in a bit and you will see it update in here. So next up, let's add some of the textures. So we have a bunch of different container colors here. We have a blue container, a green container, and an olive container, and even a red container. So one of these 4, these are all albedo textures. So basically, you know, the ones that we plug into base color. You can choose either one of these 4, depending on which color you want the container to be. And there's once again a metallic and a normal texture. So I'm going to choose the green container, and once again, import them all like that. So, rename them, and then let's get cracking. So, okay, same as before, I'd like you to add them in here, and then connect them up, and enjoy the results in here. So, pause the video now, and give that a go. Alright, so, same as before, click and drag, maximize, rearrange them a bit, like so. And this in here, and this in here, apply, and save. And now you can see in here, oh, nice, our container suddenly has textures. That's great. Okay. One more thing we could do is, once again, we could specify, you know, how rough the container is by holding 1 and left-clicking and then plugging this into here and, I don't know, 0.4 maybe. And now you can see with the metallic input, you can see that we have a texture that isn't just completely black. So if we open this up, you can see this jumbled mess of colors, and some parts are white and some parts are black. And this basically allows us to define, you know, which part of our container, depending on which part of the texture is applied to this, is something called UV mapping. Another complex topic I won't really get into, but, you know, these parts of the texture are applied to some of these parts of the container, and you can basically say, okay, we want these parts to be especially metallic and others not so much. So you get a different look if things are metallic, more metal-like look, which is what you would want from an option called metallic. So this is how you can add something, an object, to our project, and how you can add textures to it. So, if we just play, you can see we can now jump on the container. If it was good at video games. Hold on. Alright, yeah, you can see we can now jump on the container, we can walk on it, and it blocks the player appropriately. So one more thing I'd like to mention, in case you import something and you can walk right through it, that's probably because there's no collision. So in here, you can click on Show and Symbol Collision, and you will see this little box-like shape has popped up, and that's the collision for the mesh. So we've dealt a bit with collision before in the, for the coins, where we added a box that the player can overlap, and, therefore we can know when the player has gotten close to the coin. And in this case, the collision isn't used to check for overlaps, but rather hits, so that the player, is stopped when they reach this invisible box. And in case I'm just going to delete this one in case you don't have that. You can then the player can walk right through the box, and this is not what we want for this type of asset. Now, once you hover over it, you will see the text down there in what can only be described as yellow, saying collision prims 0, meaning this has no collision added. And while you mostly add collision in an external program, you can add some simplified collision here as a quick band-aid fix. In this case, a box collision would be appropriate because, a container is kind of like a box. And Unreal will do its best to, make the collision fit the mesh. And now that I've added this collision, you can see once again we can't walk through. Okay, just, as a quick primer on mesh collisions. Okay, and now there's one thing I would like to show you that's a bit more abstract at first. So allow me to open both of these and just put them side by side here. So just like this. You can see the setup, 3 textures, 1 roughness value. And here it's almost the same except for this texture coordinate. We could also add this here. And in case you have a lot of materials that have a really similar setup, what you can instead do is create something called a master material, and then create material instances from that for the different materials that you actually want to use, so ground and container. Okay, this is a bit abstract, but allow me to show you. Let's just put this in here. We're gonna create one. Call this m_master. And we're gonna set this up in a specific way, and then we're gonna use it instead of these two with material instances. In a second, I'll show you what these are. So for now, we're gonna right-click, create a texture sample. Right-click on this and say convert to parameter, and we're gonna call this base color. And now if we drag this in, we get an error because we need to select a basic, we need to select a base color texture here. So for now, just choose a default texture of maybe the ground, and the error goes away. Okay, and now right-click and create a texture sample parameter 2D. This is another way of creating this. We're gonna name this metallic. And we're gonna plug this in here. I can just hit Control-C, Control-V to create another node. F2 and rename this to normal. Plug this in here. Give these some space. Left-click 1. Hold that 1, left-click. Right-click, convert to parameter, and name this Roughness. Plug this in here and give it a default value of 0.5. And last but not least, texture. No, not texture cropping, but texture coordinate. Expand that, plug these into all of these. And now in here, we actually cannot change it that way. So what we can do, however, is left-click M, and we can multiply this. And that way we can also change the texture scale. So plug this output into all of these. And now hold 2 and left click. And we're gonna plug this in here like so, and set this to 1 for now. Okay, our texture looks a little strange in here, and that's why because we need to interpret this as a normal map. So right now we're saying use the color of this, but we kind of want to say, okay, this is a normal map, and then it gives us an error. We can hover over it, and we need to use a different texture that's actually a normal map. So, and now you can see this looks better. Okay, and right-click on this and convert to parameter, and we're going to name this UV tiling. And you can see that it has changed, it now gives us an error, and it has changed to a value with 4, to a parameter with 4 different values. So we need to make this a float too, so basically something with 2 values. And we can do this by plugging in the X will be the red, and the Y will be the green. I know this doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it will in a bit. So, once again, now it doesn't give us any errors. And now we've set up this master material, we can do something that's very cool. So, right-click on this, and you can say create material instance. This is a prefix by mi underscore. And now we can say, okay, let's replace the ground material first. So, do that, save, and open it up. And you will see we get this strange thing. And let's change some of the values. So on the right here, we can see all the values that we've defined in here as parameters. They now appear in here, and they're free to be changed. So for the ground, let's search for ground and apply the proper textures. Ground, normal. Okay, and the roughness, what did I set that to? Something 0.4-ish. And the UV tiling down here, and now these 2 values, the R and the G for red and green, will be used to determine the tiling. So set these to 10 each, and you will see it now changes the scale. And now, if we apply this, it should look exactly the same if I've done everything right. Almost. Okay, I think I got the roughness a bit off, but that's okay. It looks almost the same. Okay, so we've just done a bunch of steps for, what is apparently the same result, so why did we do any of this? Well, here's the thing. beforehand, you know, if we changed something in ground, we had to apply and save it. And that would recompile the shader, basically, you know, make sure the material gets updated in the world. And this is not the case for material instances. So material instances, if I say, okay, let's change the tiling to something like 2020, I can change it and it instantly applies it. So this is really great if you're just, you know, testing out what the tiling should be, for instance, or if you want to quickly change the roughness. You can see in the background it, you know, it adjusts it on the fly. This is really great. And another thing that we can do with, you know, material instances is, you know, we can create another material instance from this master material and change it to, you know, resemble the container material. So reuse is another aspect of this. And I think it also has some performance implication, but don't quote me on that. Someone else might be able to give you a better answer there. But quicker iteration times and reuse are the things that are really important for us, first and foremost. So let's go in here and also change the textures. Now you can see we have this here, and what was the roughness? 0.4. 0.4. Okay. And now we need to apply it to this mesh. So, desert, container, sm_container, and select, search for a container and select mi_container. And you can see it looks the same. So, we've now changed this mesh to use the material instance. And now, if we wanna change something, same as with the other, let's just put it like this. You can also change the roughness on the fly. And you can say, okay, maybe we want a different texture. So this checker texture. It doesn't fit the container, but you can say that you want to use it, and it will instantly update it in here. And yeah, that's really great. And basically makes it much easier to make materials, because we don't waste time, you know, creating the same setup multiple times. Instead, we just create a master material once with all the parameters we need, and then we can tweak all the parameters in here. Okay, we can actually now get rid of these meshes. They're still being referenced because they were once applied, but you can force delete them. And same with the ground. And now let's just move these in here. Okay. And now we have our material instances. Okay, a bit of a lengthy section. A bit abstract, but I hope you can see some of the benefits that material instances provide and how you can set up a master material that you can create instances from. Two more things that I would like to show you in this episode. One is we're gonna import a jerry can mesh and replace the coins with it, so that I can also show you how you can replace static meshes inside of blueprints and adjust the rest of the coin blueprints so it fits the new mesh. And I also want to show you some basic tips for level editing, so you can get going and create levels. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. First off, we're going to create a new folder for a jerry can. In here, navigate back to props, jerry can. Same as before, we're going to import this. Do not create any materials. Rename it. Go back, create a material instance. A jerry can. Move this in here. Search for it here, apply it. For now it looks like the desert floor. This will be changed in a bit. Close all of these down. Open this up. And yeah. Okay, so once again, you can see we only have 3 textures here. We're going to use all of these. So import these and try to apply them here in the material instance, and also play around with the roughness. And I don't think you need to change the UV tiling. So try that out, and see if you can do these steps by yourself. Alright, so I'm just going to do this rather quickly because it's not really anything different like before. but just so you can see if you did it right. Import them, rename them if you like that. Check all of these free because we need to change all of them. Search for jerrycan. Albedo goes into the base texture. The metallic goes into metallic, and the normal goes into the normal. And now, if we go in here, you can see we now have a nicely textured jerrycan, and I think the roughness is okay. So, let's change the coins to be jerrycans. Go back to platformer and open up our coin blueprint. And once it opens, go into the viewport, select the mesh, the static mesh component, and on the right here you can change it. So you can search for it, but here's the jerrycan. So let's add this. You can see it is rather stretched because we changed the scale back in the day. We can set this to 1 to not make it look distorted. But if we go in here, you can see our coins or jerrycans now are rather large. So we need to change their scale in here. We could technically scale them in here as well, but then we'd have to do it for every single coin, so it's best to do it in here. Okay, I've just clicked this, so whenever I change one of these, the others will follow. So this is basically proportional editing. So you know, your mesh cannot distort. So if we uncheck this, then you can see I can distort it. But yeah, this is just a quick way to change all of these values. So the jerrycan still looks appropriate. So. Now this is a good size, but we need to adjust the collision box. So it actually, once again, encapsulates our mesh. So move this up a bit and scale it until it matches. So something like this, yeah. Yeah, alright, and now you can see the rest still hasn't changed. We got rotating jerrycans now, indicating that they are pickups. Okay, great. This is how you would change something, and you could do the same for the platform. If you want to say your platform is a container, you can do that now. But I'm not going to do this because it's practically the same process, just a different mesh. Or you could make the platform a jerrycan if you want to. Okay, last but not least, before I'll leave you to it, I want to show you some tips and tricks for editing levels. So save this and open this up. So now, now that we have some assets in here, we can, you know, apply this to the ground. You can scale this so it fits the ground in case, you know, you scale up the ground, you might need to adjust the texture size. Now you can drag stuff in here and get started. What you can also do is also add a mesh for the goal. So maybe the goal could be, I don't know what would be fitting in here, a well, a wooden crate, a pressure tank. Go nuts here. There's really no limit to what you can do. You can also, if you know where to look, you can also download more asset packs, of course, and really decorate your level. I'm not going to do it because this is frankly not my area of expertise, and this is really something where you can get creative, so I don't want to take that away from you. This is something where you can really, you know, let your inner level designer shine, and yeah. Just some quick tips and tricks. Just snap something to the ground, click the end key, and it will snap it based on the collision box that I've shown you earlier. So if this is inaccurate to the mesh, then it will also not snap. This is very handy in case you want to quickly move something to the nearest floor. Then there's also, yeah, I'm just going to drag this back in. Then there's also other ways to look at the scene. So if you want to look at it from just like a top view, you will see everything turns to wireframe. Change it to be lit if you want to, but wireframe might actually make sense. You can basically change, you know, the view angle in case perspective is a little confusing. If you need multiple, you can click this. It will split the viewport into 4. And if you want it back, you can once again click this button. If you accidentally click one of those and you're stuck in here, you can just go boop, boop. And in case you want to work with this, I don't really like using it But, you know, in case you're used to this from other level editors like Hammer for Source or something like this. Yeah, might be helpful. And then there's also snapping that I quickly want to introduce you to. So you can see if I move this, it moves in like intervals. You can change these intervals to be something much smaller. So you can see there's it moves much smoother or much larger. Well, yeah. And you can see the grid here actually adjusts for that and kind of previews you know, how large a unit is. So that's something. And you can do the same for rotation. So, you know, this also rotates in intervals and this scales in intervals. So that's where you can do it. And if you have a really big level, you can set the camera speed and now you can move much quicker. Or if you really need to get in close, you can set it to 1 and then it moves very slowly. And you can, once again, you can actually multiply it by this. So if you set it to 8 and 10, you can go even further, even faster. So yeah, useful as well. Okay, that's it for basic controls and tips for level creation. So I guess your next task is to just, you know, decorate the levels we created. And if you want to make more, even, you know, can even make more. You now know how. Or if you don't remember, watch the last episode. Okay. Now is the time to review what we've done. We've done a lot. Where do I even begin? We learned how we can import textures. We learned a bit about what the different textures do, how they play with each other to create something, you know, a nice material. We learned what materials even are and how they differ from textures and the various ways in which they can be used. We learned about master materials and material instances and how we can use them to speed up our workflow and reuse a bunch of functionality. We learned how we can import assets and give them collision and check if they have collision. We also learned how we can import assets and use them in blueprints. And we've learned some more advanced level editing controls. Okay, yeah, I think that about covers it. In the next episode, we're gonna be looking at sound and how we can add a few sounds to our game so it isn't just all silent. And yeah, I hope you're looking forward to that, as always, and I'll see you then. Creator out.